Let's begin.
Good afternoon. I'm Greg McCormick, Communication Chair for the IABC Heritage Region. I want to thank Alyssa Zeff and Melissa Bass of Davis & Company for putting together today's presentation, Harnessing the Power of Generative AI for Communicators. Before we begin, I just want to let everyone know that today's presentation is being recorded, and all registrants will receive a link to the recording along with the slides and a resource workbook courtesy of Davis & Company. The presentation will also be interactive, so if you have any questions, please use the chat feature throughout. Finally, as you exit today's webinar, a participant survey will appear. Please take a moment to fill this out so we can continue to improve our programming. And now, let me turn the program over to Alyssa and Melissa.
Thank you, Greg. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Little quick background on Davis & Company. We are an employee communication agency based in northern New Jersey. Personally, I have been at Davis & Company for 9 years. Before that, I was 10 years at a large global healthcare company leading communication for them. Before that, various PR agencies in New York City. I've been a speaker at many events, including IABC, PRSA, Interact. I got my degree in communication from Vanderbilt University, and I am here with my colleague, Melissa Bass, who can introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Bass. I've been at Davis & Company for about 2 years. I spent the last 15 years in communications for global brands such as Sony Corporation, Wyndham Worldwide, Toys R Us, United States Golf Association. So spent a lot of time in-house in communications. I also serve as an adjunct professor at William Patterson University, teaching public relations, social media, and corporate communications. And I have both my bachelor's and master's degree in communications from Rowan University.
So what you won't see on here is that any computer science degrees and that's an important, relevant thing to note. Melissa and I are not AI experts, and we are not here to claim that we are AI experts. What we are communication experts who are taking the time to get smart about AI, its impact to our industry, and how we believe we can use it in our roles, ethically, transparently, etc. And that's what today's about, focusing on, as communication experts, what role does AI play for us? So
Awesome.
With that, we'll get started.
So let's just generally talk about communication and where we've come and where we've been. For those of you who have been in the industry for a long time, you remember a time perhaps before we were leveraging a lot of computer-based technology to complete our work. In fact, I know when I started my career, when we used to do our press clips, we would actually go to the newspaper, cut them out of magazines and newspapers and paste them on paper and, physically hand out our press clips. But the internet and email and other technologies have made a lot of that easier for us, and we've been able to change the way that we work. Social media was another example of where we've been able to transform the way that we communicate with our different audiences. And most recently, especially around the COVID-19 pandemic, the shift in where we work. So not just how we work, but where we're working and how we connect with others through hybrid work or working from home, or leveraging collaboration tools like Teams or Slack or Zoom chat to be able to connect with others. And artificial intelligence is that next big disruptor for our industry, and it's pretty much everywhere you look. You can imagine that this is going to shift everything about how we do our jobs and how others do their jobs in other industries across the board. So this is just another disruptor, and we as communicators have a great opportunity to figure out how to best leverage this technology, how we've done with all of the other platforms, and be able to learn how to leverage artificial intelligence to enhance the work that we do. So I think it would be helpful for us to maybe level set on what we're talking about. Many of you have used artificial intelligence before and maybe not even realized it. Things like talking to Siri or Alexa to ask or answer questions, or if you've gone and purchased something on a website and then used a chatbot to answer a question that you may have about that specific product. Those are all use cases for artificial intelligence. What we're talking about on today's webinar is specifically generative artificial intelligence. And this is where we use machine learning to be able to create new kinds of content, such as audio, images, text, videos, general content that's based off of the way that the technology is trained. So the tool takes all of the input that you put into it, it learns from it, and uses the human direction to provide an output. And we're specifically referring to the content that it creates. So we're not talking about chatbots or things like that. Those are all still considered artificial intelligence, but what we're talking about in today's webinar is around content and the use of generative AI. So our first question is, how many of you are actually using generative AI in your role today? We're going to talk a bit more about how you can do it, but we would love to know in the chat if you've used it today. So go into the chat and let us know yes, no, or you can even say you're not sure if you're using it because you may not understand whether or not you are. And Alyssa's going to tell me what you guys all say. I know our team has already started experimenting with how we're going to use it, and we'll provide a couple of examples today, but would love to hear from you if you're using it. And if you are using it, we'd love to hear maybe how you're using it. Feel free to type it in the chat.
We had a bunch of hands go up and I don't see anything in the chat. So it's possible that the chat function is not working.
I'm thinking maybe the hands raised are people who are using it. Okay, so there's a couple of you out there that are using it. That's great. And hopefully maybe you can chime in if we can get the chat working on ways that you're using it, and we can leverage that as part of our conversation today. But for now, Alyssa, why don't you walk everyone through what we're talking about in terms of our guiding principles on how best to leverage artificial intelligence as communicators.
Thanks, Melissa. So we've developed a set of guiding principles that I'll walk you through that I think is a great framework to think about how you might want to use this and also provide some guardrails, if you will. So they are, number one, user expertise. AI is a supporting tool. Number two, get to know the AI tool you are using. Number three, define your purpose. And then number four, ensure AI is helping you. And we're going to go through each of these in a little bit more detail. So starting with using your expertise, your brain is irreplaceable. So you have to think about identifying ways to use AI to support the work that you do, but not your role. And here are some examples of ways where we see opportunities. One is ideation. So what does that mean? Stuck on an idea, you have to do a blog post. You could use it to generate a couple of ideas. Need some inspiration. I need some ideas for social media to support something that's happening. Need to develop an editorial calendar to sort of lay out on a specific topic. Another one is inspiration, which could be creating headlines. Here's the content for something, write a few headlines, get inspired by it. Again, drafting social media posts, looking at it as overcoming writer's block. Sometimes I'm stuck here. Maybe AI can inspire me with something, smaller chunks of content. Another one is optimization, using AI to add SEO keywords. Could be keywords you've already identified. You could ask AI to identify based on what you're trying to accomplish. It can be for shortening content. So you have a long article, but you need a a brief summary for an email digest, or you need a brief summary for social or a workplace post or something like that. It can be condensing what you already have. And then finally, editing. Asking AI to cut it down to a certain number of words, revise for a specific style, AP style, or et cetera, looking at proofreading, et cetera. So I'm not sure if we've got chat going or not. For those who have said that you are using it, what are some ways, either ones that we've identified or other ways that you are possibly using using AI right now? So I think we're having some chat technical difficulties. We'll come back to this because maybe we'll call on a few people and allow people to talk, and we will get some more there. In the meantime, our next guiding principle, getting to know the tools. This space is changing every single day. Every day you are seeing headlines about new things that are evolving or regulations. So the types of tools that we're talking about, here's an example of what's out there. And again, this is just a smattering based on the type of content that they generate. So you see text. I think the most well-publicized one right now is ChatGPT, not the newest one, but definitely getting the most attention. Image, you can see a few here. There's also content generation for music, code, voice. So it just gives you an idea of a few examples of what the space looks like right now. But I think the key here is that there are a lot of risks related, and this is why getting to know the tool is so critical. Some of the common risks are data security. So generative AI tools use data inputted to train the model. And then that data that's inputted can become publicly accessible. So if you're using, for example, the publicly available version of ChatGPT, anything that you put in there, ChatGPT is learning and potentially feeding to others. So it's important to understand where it's pulling its information from and how it's using the information that you input. So you guys have all probably heard about a lot of organizations that are coming out with policies for this and some of the other reasons that we're going to go through alone. They are big organizations are coming out with we know of financial institutions that are saying flat out, nobody can use this for anything. We know of organizations that are saying, Samsung is an example that was in the news. They said, nope, no one can use it. We know of very large global healthcare organizations that are saying, hey, yes, you can use it, but it must follow all of our privacy rules that are already in place. So for example, you can't put any proprietary information, you can't put any names, you can't put et cetera. And keep in mind, that's for generative AI. These are organizations that are using artificial intelligence in closed systems for other things. They're using machine learning for data analytics and things like that. But when we're talking about these sort of public generative AI tools, being very cautious on how this information, because the organizations, the tool, everyone's not entirely clear or known where that data comes from. Another is privacy for the same reasons. What can be used, what can be seen, reliability of information. So some tools are not pulling recent data. We read somewhere, and I've heard a couple of different dates now, nothing after 2019, nothing after 2021. Again, you're not clear, and it could be pulled from something that somebody else uploaded. So not being aware or certain of how reliable that information is a big risk. And finally, copyright. Again, generative AI is pulling from the data used to train the tool. It may be pulling from existing work that belongs to somebody else. So whether or not it can be used, etc. So your greatest weapon against these risks is knowledge. And what that means is do your research, get to know as much as you can about the tool that you're choosing to use, ask a lot of questions and of the tool, of the, of the people who are using it, where information came from. You have to fact check. That's critical when you're creating content. Whatever is pulled in, making sure that it is accurate and not pulled from something inaccurate. Use appropriately, and we'll get into some examples of that. And finally, edit thoroughly. What you'll hear over and over from us again today is that, again, this is a tool and you are the expert, you are the resource. When we get into some of the examples, you'll see only you know if it's good or if it's good enough. And that depends on the purpose, what you're using it for, what your intended output is.
Awesome. And it looks like we've got the chat up and running. So for those of you who are trying to message us before, I think it should be working now. So as we're going through, if you want to chime in with any comments or questions, feel free to put that in the chat. So the next guiding principle is around defining your purpose for using artificial intelligence. So at this point, we've kind of walked you through how these tools work and what are some risks involved in using them. But once you've understood all of that, you can decide how you want to use it. And we want to share some examples. So when you're thinking about it, you want to try to think about what you're trying to accomplish. So you select deliverables or things that you're working on that you want to start with, and to decide how artificial intelligence can help you do that task. So examples, increase engagement in my content. So maybe thinking of catchier headlines, writing more social media posts because you don't have time to do it on your own, embedding keywords into content that you're creating so that you can drive more search traffic to your site. You wrote some social posts, but maybe they're too long. So maybe they can help, the tool can help you cut words. Again, all of those actions are tied to an objective, which is increasing engagement with my content. So you're not just thinking about specific tasks, you're thinking about specific outcomes. Another example, and many of you can probably use this pretty on the daily, is increasing your productivity. So Alyssa talked about this before, but maybe using the tool to come up with writer's block. You could spend hours sitting at your desk trying to come up with a creative headline for something, or you can use this tool to maybe help you speed up that work. Getting some inspiration for content, trying to think through different ways to write things, simplifying the content. Maybe you put a first draft together and it's way too long. Maybe it can help you simplify it. But again, all of these things are helping you increase your productivity by saving you time in what you're trying to do. So you can come up with ways on your own, but I think what we're trying to get across here is determine what you're trying to accomplish, set outcomes for yourself so that you're not just playing around the tool. What we found is that a lot of times you may find that it becomes a time suck if you've not defined what you're trying to accomplish. And next, once you've determined how you're going to use it to accomplish, make sure that it's actually working. So you spend some time using these tools, and you want to take a look back at the objectives you've set and see if it's helping you do the work that you're doing. So has your productivity improved? Are you spending more time on valuable work that you didn't have time to do before? Is your content actually more engaging? So did it actually help you drive engagement with the content you're creating? Those are questions that you can ask yourself as you're using the tool, and then it's your job to review and adapt. So if the tool's working, that's fantastic. Continue to use it, stay the course, and maybe try new ways of using artificial intelligence if it's working really well for you. If it's not working the way that you thought it was, maybe there's another tool out there for you to try. So maybe take a look at the list. As Alyssa mentioned earlier, that list is growing and changing every day. So maybe there's a better tool that can help you do what you're trying to accomplish. Or maybe you find out that it's not working as well as you thought it did. Maybe it's really good for writing headlines, but it didn't work so well for you for editing. So maybe continue to use artificial intelligence, but change the way that you use it and use it for something that's actually bringing you value and driving engagement. So again, it's not a, hey, it worked the first time and that's great. It's a review and adapt, make sure you adjust and measure as needed. The same way that you would do communication plans, you throw your tactics out there and you see if they work. And if they don't, you adjust and continue to go course. So here's a great example. Let's say you were using it for writing press release headlines. You were drawing a blank on how to use your press release headlines. You gave it a shot. You put it in the tool. You asked the tool, hey, write me 3 examples of press release headlines for this upcoming press release. Here's the release. Try it out. And let's say it worked really well. Then you know what? Going forward, continue to use it to help you write press release headlines. That's great. But let's say it gave you press release headlines that weren't that great, and you spent more time editing the ones that they gave you than you would have just coming up for it yourself. Maybe that's not the right tool for you to be able to do that type of accomplishment. So again, think about what your objectives are and review and adapt based on how the tools are working for you. So with that, I think we want to show you some examples.
Have some fun.
Yeah,
This is the part where we're going to dive into it. But before we do that, Michelle Bennett asked a question that I did answer in chat, but it's worth calling out. She was looking for examples of good company policies that we've seen. So a few of our clients have shared them with us. They're proprietary, so we can't share them. But I can tell you generally, if it's not a blanket no, so we have Samsung is in the public domain. You can Google that. You can see they came out and said, nope, no one can use this for anything. And we have a couple of clients have said that. But where we have clients who have come out with policies that are like, okay, it's okay to give it a try, they generally have some common themes. One is, and this is what I called it, it's cautious exploration. So nothing that's going to put the company at risk. You can't put any proprietary information out there. It also includes being thoughtful about it, meaning you have to be transparent, etc. But for the most part, they try to tie to existing policies, right? Most organizations have existing, let's say, social media or privacy or risk or et cetera policies. And this should follow everything we're doing already anyway. So I think those common traits are what we're seeing. Great. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do before we go into the tool and start playing is play a little game. So here we have, let's start with the first one, 2 headlines. These were press release headlines. One was written by AI and one, we presume, was written by a human. Tell us in the chat, which I believe is working now, which one you think was written by AI and why? What is it that you notice about it that makes you think it's AI?
I'm seeing a good mix in the chat. I don't think we have a general consensus yet. Maybe more B's than A. What do you think, Alyssa?
I don't know. It's pretty mixed.
All right, should we show them?
Yeah. So it's A. A was written by AI. A couple of people noticed that it was capitalized. To be fair, that could have been how we entered it to get it that way. But I think what we notice is, hey, it's not that bad. It's pretty good. Like, there are times that if that came out as a press release headline, hey, that would be fine. I might want to make it a little more engaging, but I think the point here is that hey, the tool can be very helpful. Okay, next one.
Next example. So it's summertime, so Oreos have come out with their latest flavor, which is their s'mores flavored Oreos. So we pulled 3 of their Instagram posts, and then we also asked ChatGPT to write 3 Instagram posts. And we would love for you to tell me which one you think was written by AI. I'm also hungry now. I really could use a s'moreo.
Well, I just heard they're bringing back the cotton candy Oreos for the first time in many, many years. It doesn't
don't
appeal
know.
to me.
I was just gonna
I'm
say,
a
I'm like, I don't
traditionalist. I'm an Oreo traditionalist.
Yeah, at least this one is still like chocolate and like, icing or marshmallow flavor. It's close to original.
Big mix between A and B. Someone
Still a
said
mix.
that B because it sounds more formal and Oreo is more casual in tone. Someone else said B because of all the keywords. A because it has tags.
All right. The answer is B was written by ChatGPT. So the thing that we looked at when we were doing these social media posts is that the ones that were written by Oreo, seemingly written by Oreo and their marketing team, they were pretty simple, and they really let the message stand out. ChatGPT, to me, went a little overboard on some of the words, the emojis, the smiley faces. And again, what Alyssa was talking about before is that when you're using these tools, it's being trained on what it receives. And the value as a communicator, as a marketer, is that you can tailor your messages the way that you would want them to be a little more clever, a little more creative, a little more original, and that is an advantage of being a communicator. You can still use it for inspiration, but think about how you want the message to be portrayed to your audience.
We have an example where we were using it for some Davis and Company marketing stuff. We were testing it out, and it created some nice first drafts of social posts. And then the next time we tried to use it, it kept using some of the same words. And it was like, no, we don't need that one again. So it thought it was learning us, but in fact, it was just being redundant. So again, it goes to, even if it's great the first time around, again, it still needs your brain, your edits, your input. So our last example, and I don't expect everybody to read all of this content, but we at Davis and Company have an employee wellness newsletter. And we wrote an article about stretching and moving at work. And we asked ChatGPT to do the same. So once again, which is written by AI? Somebody said B because AI loves those types of headlines and titles. Lots and lots of B this time around. Oh, someone's caught a grammatical error, more text.
I think we're in a consensus on this one.
Yeah. And we are correct. Very nice. So yeah, so here's another great example of where, is it good enough? Maybe. Is it a little too wordy? Is it a little too much going on? Probably for our taste. Maybe for yours, maybe not. Maybe your audience likes that level of detail. That's up to you to decide and figure out. So before we go into the tool, now that we have chat working, I would love to go back to the question that we asked before. For those of you who are using generative AI in your work, how are you using it right now? Email headlines? Blog post drafts? Article synthesized content? Help with first drafts? Writer's block? Learning tool? Emails? email subject lines.
I'd be curious to know of the people who are sharing the ways that they've used it. Have you found it to be effective? I've got a yes.
We have a yes. Still have to edit a lot within reason.
50-50, lots of editing. And again, I think that concept around lots of editing or 50-50 is where you use some of these guiding principles to help you determine whether or not using these tools are valuable to you. Is it helping you achieve your objective? Are you using it the right way? Are there other ways that you can use it to help you do it? It's not a silver bullet tool that's going to solve all of your communication challenges, but it can help you enhance your work.
So we had someone say, I love when I ask it to include a pun for a headline, and it does a great job and saves me being witty time. I love that. So yes and no, right? So I did the same thing. I asked it to write some social media posts for me. They were kind of boring. So I kept trying to get it to be funny or witty or clever, and it just got weird and creepy. And so it takes time to learn how to input. So to Melissa's point, exactly, somebody just agreed with me. You need to spend time to learn how to prompt the tool properly. And if you are finding that you are spending way too much time prompting the tool, then it's probably, if one of your objectives is to save time, not meeting your objective. The prompt absolutely is everything. And it gets smarter, and it is getting smarter, and it has limitations. Someone asked, have we ever get a GPT draft, refine it, and put it back through the tool? So Greg, I think that's from you. I guess the question would be refining it and putting it back through the tool to what end? Are we asking it to shorten it? So we would have to define what we're asking of it next. Are we asking for SEO? Are we asking for to shorten it? Are we asking for to make it wittier or funnier, to condense it? So again, it goes to the prompt. But yes, I've done that with some of my posts. I've gotten a draft, put mine on it, put it back through. Or are you asking just to make sure that it goes back in so that the tool has learned? Heidi, if you don't mind, I would love to, you just said to us, check out the recent article in the New York Times about the lawyer who used AI for a case. If it's okay with you, I would love to ask, I will unmute you, and if you could tell us a little bit more about that. I just allowed you to talk. So you should
hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, so there was an article, I want to say it was a few days ago, about a lawyer who used ChatGPT or something, an artificial intelligence, to prepare like a legal briefing. And when other folks went back to check like the legitimacy of the previous cases that his briefing cited, they were fake. And it was just one of these instances that the lawyer didn't have any like bad intentions, but it was just a really interesting example of like something that went drastically wrong.
Thank you. Somebody just posted the article in the chat. I appreciate that. And yes, Heidi, such a great point. And I think the point that we're making, the intent is there, right? I'm not trying to deceive the court. I'm not trying, but by not understanding how the tool works and where it pulls information can get you in a lot of trouble. In that case, severe trouble. In our case, you could be putting out, as communicators, you could be putting out false information, misleading. If you work in a highly regulated environment, your company could get in a lot of trouble for something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Someone commented about this is the next marketable skill. And what a great point that is. Learning how to prompt the AI tools is a phenomenal marketable skill. We are piloting a few things at Davis and Company for just that reason, so that a few people can learn what works best, what kind of prompts it responds well to, and then so that we can help educate the rest of the team on that. But that's such a great point, and I definitely envision that becomes a resume line, a resume bullet and LinkedIn bullet as a highly marketable skill.
So maybe, I think we can come back to questions, but I think maybe for some of you who aren't using these tools, it may be helpful to show you how these tools work and what happens when you use them. So maybe we try a couple examples and then go back to questions and see what people have to say or react to when they see it. So I'm going to just switch my screen real quick. We're going to use ChatGPT for the purposes of this demo, just because it is the most widely used and accessible tool. But again, Alyssa shared that list earlier. There are lots of other tools out there, and specifically with ChatGPT, it's not a closed environment. So anything that we put in it is being learned across the platform. So I think maybe we'll just start with a simple prompt. I'm going to have it write 3 press release headlines for an upcoming product launch. If somebody could put into chat one of their favorite brands, and we'll try it out with a brand. I don't want to do a canned example because I think a live example will really show you the breadth of the tool. So if somebody could share with us, Chaco sandals, I see. Ooh, Athleta, someone's speaking my language. But we'll go with the sandals. They are going to release their summer sandals in an exclusive color. Can somebody share with me a good color? Mint
Sky
green.
blue. Oop, okay, go ahead.
I liked the mint green. I saw that one pop up first. In mint green, and there will only be 1,000 released as an exclusive, and they are sold exclusively at, I'm going to go back to my favorite, Athleta stores in the US. So we've given it a lot of information, and we're going to ask it to write 3 press release headlines about Chaco sandals, and let's see what it does. So you can see how quickly it's reacting. You can see within a matter of seconds, it released 3 examples. Would love to hear in the chat what you all think in terms of the quality of these headlines. Are they good? Do they need work? What do you guys think? Seeing a lot of bland, generic. Needs work, wordy. Yawn. Thanks, Monica. So again, I think here's an example of where the tool works really fast, but as communicators, you understand the role of a quality press release headline. Do you think this helps you by providing inspiration? Will you spend more time trying to reword it? Would you have spent less time just trying to create it yourself? Those are all the things to consider when you're using these types of tools. And again, back to the conversation Alyssa had right before we jumped into the demo, is learning the best way to prompt the tool to get you the answers that you're looking for in the right amount of time.
Melissa, we had a couple requests. Could we
Yeah.
keep the same prompt, but
Okay.
could we reprompt it to make it shorter and a more friendly tone and see what it does?
Can you make them shorter and in a more friendly tone? Chaco's minty fresh. Already not my favorite.
Okay,
They're-
so now you can see, now we're getting there, right? Like, okay, Minty Fresh, a little weird, but that's what I meant by when we ask it to be funny, sometimes it's creepy. But now you can see input gets you the output that you need. So we're getting closer, but it's your expertise that realizes what it needs. So we said, can you specify the audience? It's written an advert, not a press release. We did say press release headlines, but we could be more specific. I mean, it's like having a conversation with a person. You can ask it to do anything that you want. And what's nice about that is that you don't have to think, okay, do I have to put this in quotes and add and, or worry about a Boolean search or things like that. Just have a conversation with it. It learns well that way. But yes, you can be as specific as you want. Whether or not it's pulling useful information, you won't know until you get the output.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep playing around with this one for a little bit longer, but if anyone has a specific example outside of this one that you'd like us to try, we'd love to see some ideas you'd like us to test out. As we're waiting for those examples to roll in, again, this is a conversation as Alyssa shared, so you can even shift the tone and ask it to turn these into social media posts. So turn these into 2 Instagram posts that are short, 100 characters or less with no hashtags, because the hashtags were cheesy the last time we used them.
So we got while it's doing this, we got an interesting request. I don't know if you
Okay.
can see this prompt, and maybe we cut and paste it as is and see what it does, but it's basically asking Chat GPT to tell us, by saying it's a communication expert, what it wants to get the best output. So I don't know if you can see it.
I tried to copy and paste it, but it's not letting me, so I'm just going to type it. You are a communication and copyright expert. What would be the best way to prompt you to write a press release? What questions do you need answered to execute this?
While Melissa's
The
typing,
best
Deborah, you
failure.
said you were advised by early developers to always be nice to your AI. Use please and thank you. Yes, Sid just asked my question. Was that serious, or was and do you know why? Because we're training it to interact. Yes. If we look at the original Twitter bot that suddenly became hateful, absolutely.
All right, so it's answering the question that we asked. It touches on some of the things that you all shared in the chat as we were trying to revise our question. Who is the target audience? What is the message? What's the narrative? I mean, it's asking a lot of pretty in-depth questions. And again, going back to the guiding principles that we talked about, determining whether or not building all of this is valuable to you in your time and the work that you're trying to achieve. Alyssa, maybe you can share the marketing article outline scenario that we put together.
Yeah, absolutely. Hold that thought, because what's interesting, what the output here is, if I'm interpreting this correctly, ChatGPT just went to sort of information out there on what's needed to write a press release, but it's not actually answering the this is what I need to input to get a press release. So it probably found several websites that explain, if I wanted to writing a press release 101, this is all the information that I would need. And that's how it's answering the question. So that's interesting. So I'm sorry, Melissa, the marketing, the
outline.
Yeah. So I had a very robust, I had to write an article, a media article about something. I had a really solid outline in place and knew exactly the point of view that I wanted to have. And I tried 10 or 15 different ways to get ChatGPT to write that article based off of the outline. The problem is I have a point of view and an expertise. And so it was pushing back, even with a robust outline, very generic information and not really taking into account my point of view. As communicators, we deal with that all the time. We have to find our organization's voice, our client's voice, our leader's voice. ChatGPT can't do that for you. Now, potentially you could point to several other examples and, here are some examples of this leader's communication. But again, you run the risk of putting that into the public domain. Is that okay, et cetera?
And I think the reason I called that one out, Alyssa, is because the question that we just gave it gave us a master list of everything that we should include in the content that we would need. Again, we understand it's generic. They probably pulled it from somewhere. But even with the amount of information that you put in that tool, it still didn't give you the output that you were looking for because of whether or not you trained it the way that you needed to answer the questions that you were looking to achieve. I think we have enough time to do one more example if somebody wants to provide us with an example, and then we'll probably move on to general Q&A.
So 2 questions while you're putting that in. Does ChatGPT accept audio input? ChatGPT is specific to text only. There are tools out there that are audio, but this is a text-based tool.
It can read text from other things. So if you provide it with a link, it can, in some cases, read text from other places, but it doesn't have to be your own text.
And a great question, can you ask it to cite the references that the info was pulled from? Potentially. However, it's usually an aggregate. But let's see what happens.
And it's giving it its elevator pitch. Jorge, can you give us a link? And I'll grab the link and see if I can ask it to summarize it. Actually, I don't know if I can copy the link. Let me just go to a news article. Let's not pick a political news article, perhaps, just for the sake of pick this Adidas. Oh, that's a video. Of course it's a video. Let's pick entertainment because that's just going to be this is boring, but I am just picking video after video after video. All right, let's grab this Billy Joel article. Not today. Toby, if you ask for a headline for a press release, couldn't that be proprietary information? That's correct, Toby. And that's one of the risks that we talked about earlier around understanding whether or not your organization is comfortable putting that type of information in the tool. So you're correct that information gets put in the tool and the tool is trained to absorb that information and it can be leveraged in other places. Again, that's specific to a tool like ChatGPT. There are some closed system tools that allow you to keep proprietary information in-house. But again, that's where you have to use your due diligence to find the correct tool to use for the application that you're trying to use it for.
Milan said, could you create a fake company name and product just for the idea generation? Absolutely, you could do that. You could leave it blank also. But now that tool is learning from that fake information.
All right, so I'm going to exit out of the tool and go back to just a general Q&A to see if anyone else has other questions.
So if other people have questions, there were a few that were submitted ahead of time that will take some time to answer. One was, how do you see internal, meaning proprietarily curated generative AI, like in-house chat GPTs, being differentiated from publicly available generative AI. So the number one difference is the closed data set. So great, it's low risk, it's less risk because you're not making yourself publicly available. However, now we're pulling from a limited data set. So Box, Microsoft, they've all announced, Microsoft has announced Copilot. Box, I don't know if, I'm sure you guys, many of you are using Box. They're announcing an AI tool. That could be very helpful for searching your own company's server and gathering that information. But if you're using it to generate content, you're only pulling from your existing content. Does using a closed data set significantly increase the learning curve? Yeah. Or decrease, yes, increase the learning curve. Yes. So, but it just means that it's only pulling from what you have available. There may be situations where that's helpful. I want to search on my server for past examples of this type of document created, use that to create something similar. Super. That works well in certain situations. But if I'm really looking for new thinking, inspiration from something outside of my own space, that's going to be a little more challenging.
Alyssa, we have a question that came in from Abby Simmons, and it's actually something that you, me, Heather, and Greg were talking about the other day, which is, are there recommendations regarding when communicators should disclose internally or publicly that they've used generative AI to inform or support their work? So understanding whether ethically, where we stand on what communicators should or should not disclose about using generative AI. From my perspective. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, you jump in.
So this is a personal decision as well as a decision related to the organization that you work for. So I am a full believer in transparency. I do not want to apologize for using ChatGPT or other tools because I do not believe it's replacing my expertise and my brain. So if I'm using it in the ways that I am comfortable, I will only use it in ways that I'm comfortable fully disclosing. Many organizations are flat out, if you're using it, you have to disclose it. I was on a different webinar where people were like, I don't disclose every tool that I use. Why would I have to do it now? It is not only a decision that you have to make for yourself, but you have to know what your company and organizations and clients, for example, policies are. Like we at Davis & Company have made a flat rule. We are not entering any client information at all whatsoever, not even to the idea we said before of using a fake name to do it just to get information. We are not using ChatGPT for any client work at all whatsoever, so that we can feel comfortable in that. Melissa, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to it is just to think back to, the early, even current days in public relations or communications is that, when you send out a press release with a quote from an executive or CEO, that quote is written by the PR expert, right? It's in most cases, it was written by and approved by the CEO. The CEO saw it, said, hey, I'm going to tweak it, or hey, it's good as is. But either way, it was written by somebody else. So there's just an ethical conversation you have to have with your organization on, how people perceive the information that you're using, and what you're already doing today.
Does my ChatGPT login remember background information I gave it last week in a different interaction? For example, I'm a communication consultant for a large health system and use that to guide output. Yes, in ChatGPT Plus. So there's the generic, limited, you don't even register for an account. But ChatGPT Plus, it saves your history and in theory should know who you are. That came to, in the example I gave before, when we were using it and it kept giving us similar things to what we had done before, what we used or what we inputted, it was clearly using the same things over and over again because it thought we liked it. Will
I want
these
to.
slides be available? Yes.
I was going to say, why don't we table that, because I think the next slide will also give them some additional resources. But I do want to address a question that was up at the top from Albania. She asked, for someone just starting out, what's a good place to start? And our recommendation around that is to just dive in and try it out. So feel free to take a look at the list of tools and determine what you're trying to achieve. ChatGPT is a really good entry point because it's free and accessible to a lot of people. And just dig in and try it out. And again, maybe don't try it out with company related information, but just play around with it personally. Alyssa, when she sent out the login to our team, we had somebody ask it to write a haiku about being a communicator, just for fun. Just try it out, see what's out there, play around with it. That's really a good place to start, because your experience and the way that you use the tool and learning how to input is your first way of learning how to efficiently use the tools.
I just want to address one other question that came in ahead of time, because I think we're all probably facing this. I would love advice on working with IT, security, legal professionals who are very risk averse on how risk can be managed. And my answer is it's the same way that you would address any other risk. When I was at a large global healthcare company, I went and we wanted to make a donation on World AIDS Day. And, I had a lawyer say to me, well, what if this turns out to be where we're donating is a big Ponzi scheme? And I was like, well, if the World Bank or whatever it was turns out to be a big Ponzi scheme, we are not going to be news in that story. So it's around having informed conversations, being smart about it, being aware of what the risks are, as you are with anything, being transparent about how you're going to use it, how you're going to limit the risk. And I think it's just sitting down and having those conversations. We've all had risk averse legal, IT, regulatory, medical, everybody come up with all the risks that it can. And then you weigh the benefits of it and sit down and have proactive conversations about how it will be used, and just slowly and surely.
So Alyssa, we're starting to have some people drop off, so I thought it would be helpful if you could talk about what people are going to get out of this session.
Sure. So we do have a tool that is a step-by-step process that will walk you through a lot of what we discussed today, but designed to sort of guide your thinking so that you can figure out how best to use it for you. And it's not brain surgery by any stretch. All it is really organizing the thoughts based on where risks exist, what tools exist, how to develop objectives, how to decide if it's working for you. And if you guys have further questions or want to reach out or want to talk to us about this, our contact information is right here on the slide.
I think we'll turn it back over to Greg.
All right, thank you, Alyssa, Melissa, and everyone who joined today's discussion. If there are no final questions, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And as a reminder, never mind, if you have more questions for Alyssa and Melissa, please contact them at the email addresses on the slide. Reminder to please complete the participant survey that will open as you exit. And watch your email next week for the follow-up resources mentioned in the webinar, including the AI workbook. Also, if you'd like to present a future webinar, please email the IABC Heritage Region using the contact information on the slide displayed now. Thank you again for joining us, and have a wonderful afternoon.